We will be talking today about the last decade of Stalin's reign, about the church during the last decade of the Stalin's reign. And in 1944, Metropolitan Sergei Strogorodsky became a patriarch, and he in 1943, I'm sorry, he was elected patriarch. Next year he passed away. So a church started to prepare for the new council to elect a successor. As you remember, Metropolitan Sergei was elected by a bishop council, right? And almost all existed bishops in the Russian church assembled, right, in this council. And those bishops who opposed to Metropolitan Sergei in the 1930s, they were not invited. And in fact, there were very few of them. So there were maybe like three of them in, they were still, at least one of them, Bishop Vasily of Kinishma, he was released, I believe, in 1945. And there was another one, Sigumin Pyotr Ladygin. I'm not sure what was his situation. Nevertheless, there were only 19 bishops assembled in this council in Moscow, right? Metropolitan Sergei was very patriotic. He came up with initiative to collect money to build a tank corps, right? And this tank corps was named after Great Prince Dmitry Donskoy. This tank corps actively participated in fights against German tanks. It was heavily beaten. Many tanks were lost and so on. So, but that's something that resonates with what we talked earlier about boosting patriotic spirit. So such initiative was accepted. This tankovая колонна, this tank corps, was named after Dmitry Donskoy. So it wasn't named after a communist hero, after the hero, but it was named after the person who later on became, but was revealed as the saint of the Russian church. So, right. During the occupation by the Nazis and their allies, and by allies I mean mostly Romanians, right? Because the south of Ukraine, Odessa region, was under Romanian occupation, and Romanians, they had special mission that worked to distribute Orthodox books and so on, to distribute catechetical materials. And similar mission took place under the Germans in the Pskov region. The Pskov region was in the Soviet Union, but this region bordered with Baltic states, particularly with Estonia and Latvia. So clergy in these territories didn't suffer to the extent as their counterparts in the Soviet Union, because they were under the Soviet regime only for 1 year. So in Latvia, in Riga, there was special mission founded that went to baptized to baptize, to offer sacraments to the people in the Pskov region. And this became the famous Pskovskaya Missia. And there is a recent movie which is called Pop, right? And this movie is based on collective accounts associated with this mission in Pskov region. So most of those members of that mission, they left with Germans because they didn't want to take their chances. Those who didn't leave, they were arrested, and they survived. And one of them, I think Father Kirill Natchez, was the last one who passed away, probably just 10 years ago, or maybe even not that long ago. So all those things connected with church revival under the Germans, under the Nazis and their allies, left many open churches, many active parishes, monasteries, as Kiev's Lavra was reopened under the Germans. So, and due to this new new political course, those places were not closed. Some of them were closed down. The number was somehow reduced after the war, but not substantially. So at the end of the war, the Russian church meeting the end of the war is strong, right? As strong, with having thousands of parishes from about 100 in 1939, and also having a patriarch, Metropolitan Sergius, who became patriarch in 1943, and going to the Council of 1945. This Council of 1945 took place in the newly returned to the Church Holy Trinity St. Sergius Lavra that was closed for about a decade. It was a museum. And also museum received a special, still remained within the Lavra's quarters and probably still there. So voting at the council was conducted in the open manner, that hierarchs would just would stand up, and they would declare whom they believe to be patriarch. And they unanimously elected Metropolitan Alexei Simansky of Leningrad. Metropolitan Alexei, he, similarly to Metropolitan Anthony Hrapovitsky, didn't come out from the lineage of Russian Levites. He was not from clergy family. He was a nobleman who became a monk, similarly to Ignatiy Brancheninov, right, of his own volition, but who also crossed the boundaries of Russian class society, because it wasn't expected that a nobleman of aristocrat would become a monk, right? So kind of was more expected from clergy to fill those positions for clergy children's. So he was a bishop who was ordained before the revolution from the old consecration. And he had to work hand in hand with the newly founded the Office for Religious Affairs, right? That was set up by the state to control religious organizations. What is important to remember, that all those changes in the life of the Russian Church took place because of the personal decision made by Stalin. So coming up with all those initiatives, like having a journal published again, and reestablishing a theological school in Holy Trinity, St. Sergius Laura, giving more breathing space for the Russian church, didn't really reflect onto the current set of laws, and those laws were adopted in 1929. So, and those laws prohibited children to be educated in religion, probably even attending church until sort of certain age. So, and that became a problem in the years following Stalin's death in 1953, because the next chairman of the party, Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev, he pointed out to Stalin's overstepping actually Soviet laws, and he added those personal laxities towards the laws that made by Stalin to this list of Stalin abuses of power. So in 1945, after Patriarch Alexei, Metropolitan Alexei was elected Patriarch, the decision was made by the Soviet state to demolish renovation structures, because renovationists, they did not really gain any followers, and also they became an odd tool, an odd thing in itself. After the having Russian Patriarchate, kind of it was odd. They didn't really make any sense, to support them. So they were dead-end developments. So renovationists were ordered to join the Russian church, and the remnants of renovationists, minus their last metropolitan, Alexander Vedensky, they joined the Russian church through the rite of repentance. So they were received in the Russian church according to the ranks that they had before joining the schism, and those who were let's say you were a deacon, then you joined the Renovationist and you became an archpriest, so you would have to be reordained. It's similar to the situation with the Kievan, so-called Kievan Patriarchate nowadays in Ukraine. Okay, so now, right, and it was in 1946 when renovationists were basically closed down. Okay, and the council took place in the early 1945, before the end of the war.
Sorry for that. I didn't catch that date when the renovationist church was basically disassembled.
1946.
46. Okay.
Yes. So, and already in 1946, I'm sorry, already in 1945, the Soviet army was crossing the border, the former border, right, and moving into Central Europe, so chasing Nazis' army, but going there also without leaving, in a sense that it was a restoration of the partition of Europe envisioned by Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of 1939. So those countries that were liberated from the Nazis, they became part of the Soviet bloc until the end of the Soviet Union. And those countries like Poland, like the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, right? They all had very, very significant Orthodox population. So again, what do you do with this? Are you going just to start closing the churches? It's really will be very counterproductive and probably very destabilizing, and just probably they could not even afford this. And what's for again? Because I mean, there was this change in mindset, change toward sort of great Russian patriotism that was connected with restoration, Russian imperial insignia, sort of Russian imperial uniform, right? That was the Soviet type uniform from the pre-war period, was substituted around 1943, replaced with Russian imperial uniform. So, and then there were a number of appeals to Russian references to Russian patriotism, this movie, Alexander Nevsky, and so on. I believe Отец Иоанn Christiankin, if I'm not mistaken, who is now a candidate to be saint in the Russian church, he was arrested for mentioning Alexander Nevsky in his sermon before the war. But now Alexander Nevsky is totally persona grata, and it's okay to mention him, but despite the fact that he was a saint, he's a saint of the Russian Church. So with all those new territories, a question became topical that the Russian Church would be active. So this foreign politics became an important factor to justify existence of the Russian Church, because Russian Church could be useful to the Soviet state as an international tool. Okay, so in all those territories of Central Europe, there was presence of the Russian Church abroad, right? Especially you remember that the seat of the Russian Church abroad was in Serbia, and a representative of the Moscow Patriarchate came to Serbia, and he received repentance from those clergymen of the Russian Church abroad who didn't leave westward with Metropolitan Anastasia. So in other cases, like in China, where Russian Church abroad was very heavily present, no such rite of repentance was required, as far as I know. Right? They basically just joined the Russian Church, joined Moscow Patriarchate. So with election of Metropolitan Alexei, a patriarch, a question about recognition of the new leadership of the Russian Church came into being in front of before Eastern Patriarchs. So Eastern Patriarchs, they unanimously recognized Patriarch Alexius I as a legitimate patriarch of the Russian Church. And in 1946, Patriarch Alexius toured the East, visiting the holy city of Jerusalem, and also attempting to visit those monasteries in East Jerusalem that are still remained until nowadays under the Russian Church abroad. So because they have as a ruling bishop, Patriarch of Jerusalem, right? So the Patriarch of Jerusalem is still the bishop of Отец Roman Krasovsky. So, and then he's connected with Metropolitan Hilarion, but his real bishop is Patriarch of Jerusalem, according to Orthodox canon law. So, and since they were guests of Patriarch Alexei was guest of Patriarch of Jerusalem, The Russian Church abroad couldn't really sort of shut them out from the churches. So they came to church during the service, but they were instructed not to ask, nuns were instructed not to, don't pay any attention, carry business as usual, so don't get blessings and so on. Kind of, it was odd situation. As a result of this visit, Patriarch of Jerusalem started to, recognized Moscow Patriarchate and prohibited co-celebration with the clergymen of the Russian Church abroad in the Church of Christ's Resurrection, right? So they were still allowed to commune. That's how it was when I visited in 1998. So we were allowed to commune, but co-celebration only started after 2007, or restarted, better to say, because before the war, there was full communion and full relationship. But the Russian Church, Moscow Patriarchate asked for more, that they would be like excommunicated and so on. But Patriarch Jerusalem didn't agree to adopt full measures against the Russian Church abroad, and kind of, as I said, stopped to celebrate, but permitted to clergymen to partake and pilgrims as well. So when Bishop Seraphim Ivanov of the future Archbishop of Chicago visited Patriarch of Jerusalem the same year, he apologetically explained to him that we recognize Moscow, and part of this recognition also includes stop communion with you. And also now, as it was before the revolution, the Russian state started to support Eastern Patriarchs monetarily. So, and it also was part of this new policy, external policy. So similar things were done in Finland, right? There was, because the Church of Finland separated from the Russian Church in 1923, went under the Ecumenical Patriarchate, because the Ecumenical Patriarchate in the 1920s started to declare itself as the only church for the diaspora, right? And also as it is now, as the Ecumenical Patriarchate says now, that it's like a chief arbiter. So it's kind of can receive appeals from other churches. And the Church of Finland went under the Ecumenical Patriarchate. The Russian Church never recognized it. So now it was, after the war, the issue was regulated. Then after Cephaly of the Georgian Church was recognized in after the war, because Georgian Church also re-established its ancient autocephaly, since the Georgian Church, way older than the Church of Russia, is connected with Saint Nino, right? It was part of the Church of the Antioch, like 5th century. But then when the Georgian state joined the Russian Empire at the beginning of the 19th century, this autocephaly was abandoned, and there was special office, Gruzina Emeritinskaya Kontora, at the Most Holy Governing Synod. So kind of Russians just included this Georgian Church as a special exarchate. And similar layout was discussed for the Ecumenical Patriarchate, because Russians were about to take over Constantinople during the First World War, I'm sorry. And no less than Metropolitan Anthony Hrapovitsky, being a paradoxical and brilliant thinker, he confronted this saying and say, "What are you talking about? We should join them. Not we make Ecumenical Patriarch another department of the Russian Synod. I mean, what are you talking about? He will be our patriarch, because Russian didn't have patriarchate at this time. So he kind of demonstrated his church thinking, and that's why he was respected in the East, because he was considered to be a phil-Ellen, or somebody who has a soft spot for the Greeks and for the Byzantine legacy. So the fact of recognition of Patriarch Alexei, he was all Russian Church abroad bishops in China, including St. John of Shanghai, recognized him. Then St. John withdrew, and St. John was not in communist-controlled China. He was in South China, in Shanghai, where there was still a nationalist Qingashek, Chiang Kai-shek government, Kuomintang government. And but nevertheless, he wasn't sure if Metropolitan Ecstasy existed. Metropolitan Ecstasy was in South Germany, without really internet or connection or anything that he could, he could tweet about his existence and so. A Metropolitan Bishop John of Shanghai recognized him. He was a vicar bishop of Archbishop Victor of Peking. And Archbishop Victor, he recognized Moscow Patriarchate. So St. John followed, but then he stopped commemorating him, learning about the existence of Metropolitan Anastasia, because he gave a pledge of allegiance to the Rocker Synod, Rocker Council. So, and then also those Russian bishops those Russian clergymen in Russia who were known as non-commemorators, because they didn't commemorate during services Metropolitan Sergei, since they didn't consider him legitimate and his course considered legitimate. In 1945, very many of them started to pray for Patriarch Alexei, because they believe that this is a new leaf, this is new beginning, this is new start. It's not really connected with problems, and he was recognized by the Eastern Patriarch. That was also a big point. But there is still many. When I say many, we might talking about maybe, I don't know, maybe a few dozens of clergy, right, who refuse to recognize Patriarch Alexei and remain in underground. So at the beginning of 1946, there was Council of Lvov, which is a controversial council, because this council abandoned Greek Catholicism or uniatism in Ukraine, in Western Ukraine, and unions were told to join Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church. So officially, Greek Catholics unions ceased to exist in the Soviet Union. Non-officially, there was still underground church, and there is also still a current than those who joined the Russian Church. They remain loyal to Greek Catholic Church. And when I say Greek Catholic Church, I mean what is called in Russian Unia, which is movement started with the Council of Brest in 1596, when a hierarchy of Ukraine joined Roman Catholics, but the flag in big numbers refused to follow, and clergy refused to follow. That's how union started in 1596. Now the Lvov Council of 1946 proclaimed end of this union of Brest. But that, because it was initiated by the Soviet state, as soon as the Soviet Union started to collapse, huge numbers of parishes turned their affiliation in the course of night. So like in Western Ukraine, there are hundreds of parishes left Russian Church in 1989, 1980, 89, 1990, maybe 1888, 1888, that's what I want to say, 1889, 1890, because it demonstrated that this Union of Brest, I'm sorry, Union of Lvov, Council of Lvov in 1946 was not really something that was a grassroots movement. It wasn't something that was coming from people, but what was initiated so by the state. Right. So now the Russian Church abroad didn't supposed to exist because Metropolitan Anastasia was remained alone, with the only other bishop was Metropolitan Seraphim of Berlin in Germany. So that's why St. John of Shanghai, he wasn't sure if Russian Church continued to exist. Most of the Russian Church abroad was in the Central Europe, right? Most of the Russian Church abroad was on territories controlled by Axis powers, which means Germany, Italy, and Japan, and their allies. Now, with all those changing borders, right, the old Russian Church abroad, as it was known before the war, ceased to exist. But a Russian Church abroad suddenly in 1946 resurrected, because with Germans, there were many bishops who left their dioceses with Germans. Ukrainian bishops of the Ukrainian Autonomous Church, which was an autonomous church of the Moscow Patriarchate. So, and there were also the similar church in Belarus. And as I was saying earlier, from Belarus, all bishops left with Germans, but two of them later came back. But we are talking about like 6 bishops or so. They joined the Russian Church abroad. Like, let's say there were 8 bishops, but I'm not precise, but sort of it gives you a range, gives you idea. So like 6 of them joined Russian Church abroad, and maybe about 4 bishops from Ukraine. And now you see there is like 12 bishops already of the Russian Church abroad. But since those bishops, Belarusian bishops, they were from Poland. They were from the Western Belarus, as it was controlled by Poland. Right. And bishops from Ukraine, they were also those from Western Ukraine, like Metropolitan Panteleimon, or they were from the Soviet Ukraine, like a bishop whom I've been studying very many years, Archbishop Leonti of Chile in Peru. He was Bishop of Zhytomyr during the war. He was serving liturgy almost every day to consecrate, to ordain clergy, because as I said, there was huge need for clergy. He ordained during his few years under the German occupation around 300 clergymen, right, deacons and priests. But those bishops, they never were part of the Russian Church abroad. And because of that, there were also consecrations of bishops who would come from trusted clergymen of the Russian Church abroad in order to counterbalance this sort of influx of new arrivals. Thus, in Geneva, where Metropolitan Anastasia stayed with monks from Slovakia, Bishop Seraphim Ivanov was consecrated, who later became an abbot of Holy Trinity Monastery, and then one who founded the Kursk Route Hermitage in Maho Park, New York. So he was consecrated, and then Bishop Nathanael Lvov was consecrated, right? And then there were still Rocker bishops in America who were part of the North American Metropolitan District, because in 1935, those Russian immigrant churches, their representatives, they met in Serbia. They met in Serbia, and they came up with solution for their administrative solution for the Russian diaspora to implement metropolitan districts. So, and there was metropolitan district in North America and Canada, but North America metropolia was was led by the supreme organ, which was and is and remains, but back then it was known as Pan American Sabor. Now it is Pan American Council. So the seventh Pan American Sabor met in Cleveland, Ohio in 1946. And they, they, clergy and laity in majority, bishops in minority, they voted out to cease subordination, cease relationship with the Russian, with the Rocker Synod, right? Because they considered Russian Church abroad to be collaborators of the Nazis. That's one of the reasons. Another reason, because Russian Church abroad was adamant about not recognizing Moscow Patriarchate. Patriarch Alexis I was also recognized as non-canonical by the Russian Church abroad. So, and they wanted to receive autocephaly. They called it autonomy, but in fact they meant autocephaly. They wanted to receive independence from the Russian Church, because Russian Church was still considered them to be schismatics. When I say them, I mean North American Metropolitan District, which has became a nucleus, the major content for the future OCA. Continental parishes in the continental US that were previously Greek Catholics, Uniates, right, who joined the Russian Church at the end of the 19th century. So they had this council, they voted to cease communion with the Russian Church abroad, and that's how Holy Trinity Seminary came into being. If not this decision in 1946, perhaps St. Tikhon Seminary that was founded, actually was it founded? Yes, St. Tikhon Seminary was founded the same year, but St. Vladimir Seminary existed for 10 years, and perhaps that the seminary would take care of the needs of the North American district, metropolitan district. But because communion was placed on hold between churches, and Russian Church abroad had already dioceses before the decision of 1935, when everything was merged. Now those dioceses, and that's where Holy Trinity Monastery was established by Archbishop Apollinari, right? So now, since communion was lost, the Russian Church abroad reestablished its dioceses in North America. So those bishops who were previously part of North American Metropolia, Rocker bishops, they left Metropolia and reopened their dioceses under the auspice, under the Amaphorian of the Russian Church abroad. Okay. So, and now two churches started to exist separately. There were very little difference in sense of theology. It was the same calendar. It was also the same anti-Soviet rhetorics, because the Cold War started, and North American Metropolia also didn't have very, how to say, sympathies for the Soviet regime. They kind of very often had working relations with each other, so clergy can, go from one parish to another. But of course, also Russian Church abroad believe it was right decision what was Russian Church abroad doing was the right thing, and there often was polemics, right? The bitter polemics connected with Metropolia, like in the minutes of one of the synods of North American Metropolia, there is a count that actually Jordanville monks, they were preaching against a parish of Metropolia in Syracuse, and a priest from Syracuse complained that he lost some parishioners because they got under the influence of monks from Jordanville. So basically, that Metropolia was not fully Orthodox. So let's open new page of bitter ecclesiastical polemics in North America. Right. Metropolitan Evlogi, who was the head of parishes under the Russian parishes in Western Western Europe under the Ecumenical Patriarchate. He rejoined the Moscow Patriarchate without receiving canonical release from his superior, from the ecumenical throne, and then he died in 1945. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to